Today, Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day, for the sixth time in a row, President Obama deferred to Turkey and refused to use the word he promised to use, though he noted, quote, "I have consistently stated my own view of what occurred in 1915, and my view has not changed." President Obama called the Armenian genocide undeniable.
Yeah, undeniable, but unrecognizable, I guess. Joining us now is Eric Bogosian. You know him, Armenian American actor, novelist, playwright, author of a great book, Operation Nemesis. And welcome. Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
This is such an important topic, and I mentioned to you that I live right by an Armenian church, and even before I moved to that location, I've had guests on for decades about recognizing what happened. And as you know, when you talk about the Holocaust and being Jewish, I mean, there's no reason that this should not be acknowledged by the United States. It's something that absolutely happened. But your book is so fascinating because it talks about assassins hunting down some of the perpetrators of the genocide. It reminds me in a way of what Israel does sometimes, like after the Munich massacre. They also took years to do that. But talk about your book and talk about how that was done.
Well, first of all, this is not a fictional story.
No,
this is a true story that I stumbled across when I was investigating one of the assassins, a man named Soghomon Tetlerian, who supposedly was a student in Berlin. When he ran into Talat Pasha on the street, he saw him and he gunned him down a few days later. That's what he said in court. What he didn't say was that he and a number of others were a gang of assassins operating out of Massachusetts, and they were hunting down Turks all over Europe in 1921 and 1922. I think it's a really important story to tell that I didn't know anything about, and I thought I knew something about the Armenian genocide. I grew up with grandparents who told me about it, but I'd never heard of this incredible act of revenge.
I had never heard of it until I saw your book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it had been covered before by a French journalist named Jacques de Rogy in the mid-'80s. But that book is very dense, and it's basically known in France. And so I decided to expand on it. And a lot of archives have opened up since that time. I was able to do some more
So
work.
who you say out of Massachusetts? I mean, that's where all this was being run. So who was running it, and how did it wind up being run out of the United States as opposed to overseas or closer to home where it all occurred?
It was easier to raise money in the United States. It were the men who had decided they wanted to do this were living in the United States. They were not Mossad agents. They were a CPA in Syracuse.
Wow. That makes it even more exciting and more amazing.
Life insurance salesman in Hartford, a small-time editor in Boston. And what they did was they recruited a number of men who knew how to handle weapons, and they sent them all over Europe to track Turks, and one by one they knocked out a good chunk of the Turkish leadership that was running the Ottoman Empire during the genocide.
And that's what we should point out when you say to hunt Turks. It wasn't just anybody who's Turkish. It was the people responsible, the leadership that was responsible for the genocide.
Oh yeah, I mean, they had already actually been convicted of war crimes and had been sentenced in absentia in Turkey right after the war. Those later, Kemal Ataturk would remove all those convictions, but at the time they were war criminals who were basically on the run.
And who organized? I mean, how did it come about? What was the genesis of it?
There was was
it an accountant and another guy just sitting in a bar one day saying, "Hey, why don't we do this?" Or how did it start?
No, the key man was a revolutionary and a parliamentarian in Turkey in the Ottoman Empire named Armen Garo. And he went before the very young Armenian Republic, which existed at the time in the Caucasus, where it is now. And he asked secretly to be given this mandate to run this organization. And he was helped with a man named Shahan Natali, and both of these men had plenty of connections in the United States. So I guess they felt that it would be safer to run it from the United States. But these two men ran it, and then they had various people helping them on many different levels, as well as the gunman.
And when's the movie coming out? It sounds like a great movie.
Well, we're talking to different people right now. I'm very glad that there's a book, so that if we ever do a movie, people can look at the book, because it's a pretty complicated story. And my greatest challenge was how to simplify it, make it easy to read about.
And in a movie, they always have a poetic license to change whatever the book was. Do you have confidence? Does the Armenian community? I know you don't speak for them all, but does the Armenian community have confidence that maybe the next president will recognize, you know, and here we have a president who has some kind of special affinity for, you know, Muslim Brotherhood, et cetera, and that's maybe why he broke his promise, and the next president won't and will
I can't
recognize
say what the next president will do, but I do think that at some point the United States has to stop buckling under pressure from Turkey. It's like the tail wagging the dog. Come on. We're the most powerful country on earth. They're saying they don't want to talk about it, which is an absurd request. Every other major civilized country has admitted to their past misdeeds. And Turkey, if it wants to join the family of nations, has to do this. Otherwise, they're a second-class country forever.
Unfortunately, Eric, they're in NATO, which I don't understand. I mean, Turkey is more likely to start fighting with Israel than maybe any other country in that region. They have Israel has relationships and common strategic alliances with Saudi Arabia and Egypt because what Obama has done. Turkey hates Israel. I mean, Turkey is provocative towards Israel, and they're in NATO. So what do? If Israel has to fight back at NATO, do we attack Israel? I don't know how Turkey's in NATO.
Well, I think there are structures and there are structures. At the end of the day, Israel, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt are allies against what they perceive as the main enemy, Iran.
Yeah, well, that's the only saving grace. Hey, great book. Thanks for coming on and sharing.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure to meet you. I've enjoyed your work.
Same here.
Thank you. All right, folks, again, the book Operation Nemesis. Again, what makes this so fascinating and so intriguing and such a great read is that it's all true. And I didn't know anything about this until the book, so pick it up, Operation Nemesis. Up next, Bishop E.W. Jackson. Don't go away.